You are looking live at the Flagship Podcast. Yes, indeed, I am Chip Brown, Horns247.com, joined by Taylor Estes, friend of the show.
Excuse me, creator and person that came up with the name, the Flagship. So don't you?
I mean, all I had to do was just give her a little nudge.
Yeah.
Like a little. Yeah, Taylor Estes, of course, creator, founder, namer of the Flagship Podcast. And so, listen, football season never ends here on the Flagship Podcast. And we have got all kinds of things to talk about. We've got SEC football's, okay, no, not schedules, but games. We got the 2024 games that Texas will be playing, the 8-game conference schedule. The games on that schedule we know of. And that came out actually, well, if you're a member at horns247.com, you kind of knew what was coming on Tuesday night. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. If you missed it, I mean, it's obviously all out now, but Chip did get the scoop on some of the opponents that Texas was set to face, including historic rivals Texas A&M and Arkansas, both away games, and then Georgia. He broke that story on Tuesday, nationally, kind of went viral story. And then now we know the whole thing, but Chip deserves credit for that one because that was some serious scoop, Chip.
Well, I think I caught a source in a weak moment because I understand the SEC office was calling people at Texas on Wednesday during the day, trying to find out what on earth was going on. And
Who's the leak.
Yeah, right? It was like, well, it's for us to know here at Horns 24/7 and for the SEC to find out.
Or not find out, probably, but yeah.
Exciting times. We have Longhorns and Aggies getting ready to get back together. Chris Del Conte, the athletic director at Texas, telling me we don't care that A&M is hosting the first game. We'll play them anytime, anywhere. And it's going to happen in College Station, where Texas got the SEC send-off win in 2011 at Kyle Field. Justin Tucker's 40-yard field goal breaking hearts at Kyle Field. And Case McCoy, yes, Case McCoy, getting bounced around like a pinball, running down into field goal range there at the end. Everyone's like, hang on to the ball, Case, hang on to the ball. But they're getting back together. The 100-year rivals who talk about each other in their fight songs. Taylor, I do a midday radio show in Austin on 102.7 FM from 11 to 1. And we made the poll question today. Which of the Texas games in the SEC are you most looking forward to? Florida, Arkansas, Georgia, the current 2-time defending national champ, and Texas A&M. Overwhelming Texas A&M. So you love them, you hate them, you can't live without them. So
yeah, you love to hate them too. And yeah, I'm so glad that game is coming back. I mean, those type of rivalries are good for college football. That's what makes college football so amazing, right? Like, and I know there were hurt feelings a lot from both sides. I'm not just saying from Texas A&M, but like Mac Brown didn't want to schedule Texas A&M when they left for the SEC. I think that probably was smart because I think Texas A&M at that point may have been in a little better position than Mac Brown's teams were. So I think that was probably why. But this is what makes college football special. And those are two, rivals that hate each other. I'm curious for your input. Who do you think hates each other more? Texas and Texas A&M fans or Texas and OU fans? And if you're watching this live on the Horns 24/7 YouTube or Facebook page, please, I want to hear from you too. Who do you hate the most, A&M or Oklahoma? Who do you think it is, Chip?
I think it's A&M because it's in state.
Mm-hmm.
Oklahoma fans may be living in Dallas, but they're going to be a little bit more muted because if they're in the state of Texas, they kind of, I mean, if they win, they're going to let you hear about it. But A&M fans have this A&M-ness to them. Everything about it, fish camp, the yells, the male cheerleaders in the painter suits, all that, it just lends itself to in-state water cooler mayhem.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll say the Aggies, and that's what makes it great. I mean, look, I talked to Dan Neal, the former All-American offensive lineman at Texas, two-time Super Bowl winner with the Denver Broncos. He was on the team that went to Kyle Field in 1995 and ended the Aggies' 31-game home winning streak. The Aggies were dominating Texas at that time, and that game swung the pendulum from the Aggies dominating Texas kind of during the late 80s and early 90s to Texas dominating A&M for a while in the mid 90s into the 2000s. And so he said, look, you got to give the Aggies credit, man. That environment, Kyle Field, is one of the toughest places you're ever going to play, but that's what brings out the best in you and drives you to silence that crowd the way that James Brown on a gimpy ankle and Dan Neal and a freshman fullback named Ricky Williams, they all did it that day in 1995. So, and those are the games you remember. I remember that game like it was yesterday. It was that big of a deal. And I remember the 2011 game. I remember the 99 bonfire game, where 11 kids died trying to build a bonfire for the tradition of playing Texas.
Yeah.
And I think a 12th one died later in the hospital. I mean, it was tragic and horrifying. And yet there were the Longhorns and Aggies joined together arm in arm before the game. And then they played a unbelievable game. Of course, that was also the game where Texas, they were staying at the Ramada Inn in College Station. They couldn't get a meal. Kids were running all over the streets, going to Jack in the Box. I mean, it was like mayhem, Texas trying to get a pregame meal for that game. And they never stayed in College Station again after that. They stayed in Conroe. But those are the kind of things you remember because of that game and the importance of that game. And man, I'm just so glad it is back. But you're getting your answers here, Taylor.
Yeah, it seems like it's kind of split so far. So continue to weigh in if you want to give your thoughts. We'll spotlight some of the responses on who is the more heated or hated rival for Texas in your opinion as Texas fans. Is it the Aggies or the Sooners? And yeah, that bonfire situation, that was so tragic. And I remember when Mac Brown retired, it was asked like, what are some of the worst memories? And that was one that he had said. He was like, it hurt him to the core to even talk about it, in 2013 when he was leaving Texas. And so, but yeah, I mean, this is, I'm kind of with you. I think A&M probably. I think that there's as much as Texas fans and Sooner fans like hate each other, I feel like there's a little bit of a mutual respect where I feel like the Longhorn fans and the Aggie fans, there's no respect and they don't want to give any respect. They don't want to give any credit where credit is due. They want to try to cherry pick stats even, or, like, oh, well, yeah, they may, Texas may have the all-time record, but if you look in, since the 70s is actually that, like, you don't really hear that from Texas and OU fans, but it's like, I think there's no respect and they just absolutely despise each other and they won't give any credit ever. Where I think that there was maybe a little tiny bit of respect between Texas and OU fans, just because of, I think some of those teams have been so good. OU obviously has been really good in the last, for a while when Texas hasn't been good, but they've also been on the other side of it. So yeah, I've always liked asking that question of Texas fans and of, OU and A&M fans too, because I feel like you get very different answers. But I don't know. I think the
Well,
Aggies.
it's interesting because you have you always look at the leadership of the universities, and Texas and OU, their leadership is totally aligned. Like they formed the Big 12 conference, DeLoss Dodds and Donnie Duncan, the athletic directors, back in 96, and they talked to each other about leaving the Big 12 for the SEC together. These hated rivals, but they're leaders, their presidents, their athletic directors. I didn't really realize this, but Joe Castiglione helped Chris Del Conte get a couple jobs along the way, at Rice and at TCU.
Mhm.
And so there's just a great camaraderie and respect. Whereas A&M, and Aggie fans know what I'm about to say, John Sharp is a lunatic. I mean, everything is about getting over on Texas and being ahead of Texas. And we got to get our research dollars. We got to get more things. We got more. Remember when they redid Kyle Field, and the athletic director at the time had come from South Carolina, and he was like, hey, we don't need to build a stadium that has 104,000 seats. The studies all show that, live attendance is going. Sharp's like, shut up. Don't ever talk to me again. And that guy was like dead after that. I mean, Sharp was like, we're going to have a bigger stadium than Texas. It's going to happen. And
So is Raymond Smith's comment here what you're kind of alluding to?
yeah, for sure. And that's why A&M was so mad. That's why they leaked the story about Texas and OU coming to the SEC, because they were not involved in the vote. They were left out of the room. It's also why A&M's getting the first home game. And I love A&M, and they love me. Don't ever forget that. Aggies love me. My man Chris B
I
got
just
it
saw
right.
that.
Chris B's like, the Aggies love me. Oh yeah, I think I have my own thread on TexAgs for like 12 years.
I think I do too, but don't look at it. It's terrible.
I mean, that tells you how much they love us. So we're all good. I love the Aggies. They love me. And so John Sharp, look, that guy is a crazy man. I mean, that guy blackballed Rick Perry from A&M. Rick Perry basically appointed him chancellor of the university, and Rick Perry said, hey, if I don't win the White House in 2016, I'm going to come back and be president of the university and you be chancellor. Sharp's like, yeah, that sounds good. As soon as Perry made Sharp chancellor, Sharp got rid of everyone loyal to Perry. Everyone. Yeah. Department heads, you name it. And Rick Perry, our longest tenured governor in the history of the Lone Star State, who bleeds A&M, was a Yell leader, was John Sharp's roommate at A&M, but Sharp's never forgiven him for beating him in the 1998 gubernatorial race. It's a 30 for 30, folks. And John Sharp loves me too. He calls me Cow Chip because I covered him in the legislature, and he knows I know what I'm talking about, and he knows I know Rick Perry. Mm-hmm. So it's fascinating, but that all makes it even greater. Suddenly it transcends the football, being played, and it's about personal. We're going to be over on you. Our university. It's good. It's good stuff. It's real. It's real. Like John Sharp he literally can't stand Texas, and he wants to get over on him every chance possible. Now I think he drives everyone on the A&M campus crazy. If you poured truth serum in Jimbo Fisher and Jim Schlossnagel and Buzz Williams, publicly they'd all be like, oh yeah, we love John Sharp. Privately they'd be like, this dude is too much. But anyway, I digress. The Aggies love me. I love them.
I always love when Chip gets on those tangents, especially about like the needing it to be a 30 for 30. If that becomes a 30 for 30 and ESPN does not have you as part of the interviewer, like that would be the biggest oversight ever. I mean, some of the best stories that Chip has, Bobby Knight, was that the one?
Oh my God.
at Texas
Bobby Knight.
Tech.
Like, I was talking
Chip
to
needs to
Pat
write a
Knight.
book. Yeah, he needs to write a book,
Oh
basically.
my God. I was like, I was working for the Dallas Morning News. I was covering the Big 12 tournament, and I got right in the middle of the Texas Tech basketball coaching search, in part because I'd covered the legislature, and the chancellor at Tech at the time was John Montfort, former senator from Lubbock. And so I got the scoop that they were going to hire Bob Knight. And I was literally talking to Pat Knight, his son, who told me, yeah, he's undergone some anger management. Pat was my source. Okay. So I wrote that. Then I go to the press conference, ask Bob Knight about it. And he's like, my wife has a saying, when the horse is dead, get off it. The horse is dead, get off it. And the press conference is right in the middle of the Spirit Arena. Fans are booing me. They're booing Ed Werder and all the other reporters, Tom Rinaldi. I mean, it was just bonkers. And then after the press conference, the next morning, I find out that Knight's meeting with the players at 5 a.m. It's freezing cold. I'm there. I'm talking to players as they're coming out. And then Bob Knight comes out. I'm like, hey, coach, what was the message you want? I'm not talking to you. And I'm like, I'm the only one here. Like, I mean, I'm trying to help you get your message out to the fans. I'm not talking to you. And he kind of storms off. And then I see Pat. I run over to talk to Pat. And as I'm running over to talk to Pat, and Bob Knight's getting into his car, and he's like, hey, that deal yesterday, that was pretty good. And I'm like, you're nuts, dude. You're nuts.
Is that the one? Was it his intro press conference where like there was a line of people to ask? And yeah, that was his first one. Then didn't you get back to the start of the line? And he's like, all right, we're done here.
Yeah, I said, I have a follow-up question. He's like, no, let's talk to the next person. So I went and got back in line, waited my turn, came all the way back up. And he's like, hey, I want to thank everybody for coming. And the president at the time, David Schmidley, the president of Texas Tech, told everyone, because they introduced Knight with all the fans there. And then Schmidley goes, hey, thanks for coming, everybody. We'll see you when basketball season starts. He tried to get everybody to leave so we could have the press conference. And Knight gets up. Like, if this didn't tell you that the first move by Bob Knight was insubordinate to the president, Knight gets up to the microphone and says, hey, I'd like to invite everyone to stay and help me judge these questions. I think that'd be great. I'm like, oh, this is going well. Yeah. Bob Knight's first public comments are insubordinate to the president.
Yeah, but that's always a good sign there. I think there is an Alabama fan that is on our podcast right now, and they have a really good question just before we get to the schedule for the SEC one. Is Texas back in 2023? Chip.
They better be. They better be. That's all I have to say.
Yeah. I refuse to use that slogan. I have never said it. Intentionally, I've never said it because I feel like it's the kiss of death. I will say I would be closer now to saying it if I ever were to ever mutter those words, and those words are not going to come out of my mouth. But I agree with you. They better be. They should be. And I think we're going to learn a lot about Steve Sarkisian as a head coach with the way that this season plays out.
Man, just a huge year for Texas football to maintain the momentum that Sarkisian has done a masterful job of building since 5-7. Man, if he can cash in this year with a Big 12 championship on his way out, what a momentum builder. Suddenly then Texas is being talked, because if they win the Big 12 championship, they're probably at or in the college football playoff for the first time. If that's all happening right as they're going into the SEC, you look at Texas's schedule, and we'll look at that now. They get home games against Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, and Mississippi State. Look, Mississippi State, after Mike Leach's death, they promoted defensive coordinator Zach Arnett. We don't know what Zach Arnett's about. Could be defense might be really good, but he didn't bring in an air raid guy to continue the Leach offense. He's going with a more balanced attack. Good luck with that. Kentucky didn't live up to the hype last year. Now, look, they've had 2 10-win seasons in the last 5 years. That's awesome in the SEC. Mark Stoops, great job. He had Will Levis, the quarterback, who was considered to be a high round draft pick. He ended up going the second round. Terrible offensive line. They underperformed in a year where some thought, oh man, could Kentucky contend in the East? Vanderbilt on the road. Vanderbilt is trying to get it together for whatever, the umpteenth year since James Franklin left. Florida, Billy Napier trying to pick up the pieces after the Dan Mullen experience. You don't know. They just lost Anthony Richardson, their quarterback, top 10 pick in the NFL draft. You look at it and this is not it's a tough schedule. Don't get me wrong. It is a tough schedule. You get Georgia, it's a tough schedule. You got to go play Arkansas and A&M. Those schools hate you, and you're playing at their building. And you got to go to Michigan. And remember, that was a home game for Texas, and they flipped it to Michigan to help get out of the Big 12 in 2024. Fox wanted that game as a Big 10 game in 2024, and Texas agreed to flip it so they could get to the SEC in 2024. Tough schedule, but not crazy. I mean, Alabama's got to play Georgia and LSU. Florida's got to play Georgia and LSU. Those are the two teams who played for the SEC championship last year. And those are, Brian Kelly's got it going. No one thought Brian Kelly was going to get LSU to the SEC championship game in year one, especially with Jaden Daniels at quarterback. Then you get, Harold Perkins emerges as a Micah Parsons starter kit. Texas doesn't have to play LSU. That's good. Mm-hmm. But we've got, how about this? Ray Smith. I'm in Tennessee. So the Vandy game in Nashville was some epic bar hopping after that W. Oh, I mean, Texas fans, look what the SEC did for you.
Yeah, you could go to Nashville.
A trip to Nashville to go watch the Longhorns pound on Vandy while you're eating hot chicken and getting drunk listening to country music in Nashville.
Yeah, our 24/7 sports headquarters are in Nashville. I may have to, go to headquarters that week and maybe take in a Texas Vanderbilt game there.
Oh, yeah. Texas fans will be making excuses to get to Nashville.
Yeah.
Oh, it's great. The schedule, that's when it hit me, Taylor. I have been writing about all this and the SEC and Texas and OU but it didn't hit me until I saw that grid with the 16 teams' actual opponents in the SEC for 2024. I was like, oh, look at this. It's happening. To quote Flounder from Animal House, oh, this is great. It's going to be fun. And I know Steve Sarkisian is like, shut up. We got 2023. We got, we got to go to Bama. We got BYU coming to town. It's my alma mater. They beat the crap out of Texas every time they play them. I mean, I get it. But for one day, a couple days in June when everyone else is checked out on vacation, whatever, it's okay to look ahead.
Yeah. This is a good question here from our guy, Chris, GB2000. This may be too soon, but Chip, for your insight, will the Aggie game be on Thanksgiving?
Okay. I'm double checking this. A&M fans already know the answer. I just need to double check. I think I know what I'm about to say. No. I was just checking. A&M does have LSU on the schedule. That's the game that they've been playing at or near Black Friday, Thanksgiving. That'll be a great, if we're really honoring the traditional rivalries, which is what Greg Sankey said on June 1st, then it's no brainer. It's Texas A&M and Texas. for Thanksgiving or Black Friday, whatever.
Yeah.
We don't know for sure yet, but come on.
I would hope so. I mean, I feel like that was always the game people watched. Like, I never, even when I was in college, like I can't remember the last time I actually went back to visit my family for Thanksgiving because Texas was either when I was in college playing Texas A&M or when I was covering Texas, they then, were either playing A&M or added, the Black Friday game. But I feel like with Texas A&M coming back on the schedule, like, why not? Like, I mean, I know it's late in the season, but they're conference opponents now, and rivalry week is usually falls around that time in the college football season. So play the rivalry week game,
Yeah,
like why not? And yeah, I think that should be a no-brainer, but
I agree.
who knows?
They're 100-year rivals. They talk about each other in their fight songs. Like, sorry, LSU and A&M, you were a boy band. You got thrown together. Like, hey, we'll make this the cool new rivalry.
Remember when Texas tried to do that with Texas Tech, and it was
Oh,
like
that was
oh
embarrassing.
yeah, it's like no,
Like
no, no, no.
the students tell the story, and the students stayed for A&M
hmm
for the
I stayed.
Thanksgiving weekend.
Yeah.
They never stayed for Tech, TCU, Baylor. They tried them all. Texas students didn't stay, and there was a big old hole in DKR where the student section was for those games. It's kind of embarrassing, but that tells you it's got to be a special reason for those kids to not, run out the door and go back to their hometowns for Thanksgiving. And Texas and A&M have that kind of pull.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how the schedule does come together once that's released. And the good thing, and I don't know if this may be different, but I feel like the SEC historically has released their schedules way sooner than the Big 12 has, and I'm not just talking about this past year with the Big 12 delaying the schedule release with the addition of the 4 new schools to the Big 12 for the 2023 season. Just historically, I feel like the SEC always gets that out earlier, even like mid-season. So I'm hoping that's the case for, the 2024 schedule when Texas and Oklahoma do join the SEC. I wonder, do you know if that's still going to be the plan, or is there going to be, because of the, the magnitude and the size of the conference now, they're going to delay it a little bit longer?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. I'm still learning the idiosyncrasies of the mighty SEC. But I do think that the commissioner Greg Sankey has the full respect of the presidents and the athletic directors from Texas and Oklahoma. And if you're Texas, you're like, okay, thanks for respecting our traditional rivalries. You said you were going to do it, you did it. And Georgia and Auburn are going to play. That's the longest running rivalry, believe it or not, in the SEC. And there's a bunch of really good rival, games. Obviously, Arkansas and Texas. That series in the 60s was deciding the national championship every year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when Arkansas won the 64 national championship, they beat Texas by 1 point. And it was the only loss on Texas's schedule. Darrell Royal told me that might have been one of the best teams that never won it. And his 61 team as well is the 63 team that had Tommy Nobis and won it. And then, of course, in 69, Texas beat Arkansas in Arkansas, game of the century. Richard Nixon helicopters in, hands the trophy to Texas. This is epic stuff. And then Darrell Royal and Frank Broyles, no one knew they were best friends. They were vacationing together in the summers, yet their games were deciding who won national championships. And then they retired together on the final day of the 1976 season. They just both decided, you know what? We're done. Darrell Royal, done. 52 years old, never coached again. That happened
smart,
with Arkansas.
honestly. It was probably smart of him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He lived a good, long life.
Mm-hmm.
He was shooting his age in golf. Guy was hilarious. Just, man, I was lucky enough to play golf with Darrell Royal once, and I was playing with his grandson, David, and Darrell Royal would walk up to his ball and hit it. He didn't size anything up. He just walked up and hit it, and he'd hit it right down the middle, and then he'd walk into the woods, and he'd go he knew where all the golfers hit their golf balls, and he gave me like 20 golf balls that day. I'm like, this is amazing. I'm playing golf with Darrell Royal, and he's giving me golf balls. Because he just loved to go he knew where all the wayward shots were. It was so funny. That guy was just amazing. So simple, so straightforward, so real.
Mm-hmm.
But all right, I'm wandering on and on talking about all this stuff. But this is what it's all about. I mean, this is I'm a college football addict. I'm a junkie. I'm having a moment because it's all coming back together. I was getting so discouraged with realignment, Taylor. I mean, you've been through it. You remember 2010 when Nebraska and Colorado took off, and then A&M a year later, and you're seeing these rivalries disappear, and you're like, what is happening? And now we're starting to put some stuff back together, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's what makes college football so unique and so different. And it's college athletics, but especially college football. In 2010 when Chip was reporting on the potential for Pac-16, I was just out of college. I worked in at the time ESPN Radio in Austin. And I did like the commercial schedules. It was like just a way to get in the door in the media industry. And I swear I like made the joke. I'm like, hey, Chip, I am not your personal assistant when you are on the air. But this athletic director called, this person called, people were literally calling the radio station to get interviews from Chip, or at some points, athletic directors literally were calling and I was fielding the calls. And I'm like, oh, he can't talk right now. He's on the radio. I still feel like I should have gotten paid for that from you. And I didn't get anything, but end of season. But no, that was, I'm so glad that this version of realignment brought the rivalries back together, especially the historic rivalries. I mean, Chip's almost sitting here in tears right now talking about some of these stories that he has, but
great.
Tears of joy.
Yeah. And Jeff, yes, Texas and OU will still play in the Cotton Bowl. If you were paying attention while I was at SEC meetings, I got Oklahoma Athletic Director Joe Castiglione to say that Texas and OU are going to renew their contract with the Cotton Bowl, which expires in 2025, but they're going to start talking about fan amenity improvements. I don't know if they can ever get those bathrooms to a point where anyone would willingly walk into them, but that game can't leave the Cotton Bowl.
Yeah, they've got to definitely upgrade something. I mean, even the press box, like I always make the joke every year. I'm like, AT&T should abandon being the title sponsor of that game, because we'll be in the press box and it's like, I have no Wi-Fi, the Ethernet cable, like plugs don't work. We tried to do a live show this past football season in the press box at the Cotton Bowl, and we were basically just like taking an Ethernet cord and trying to plug it into any Ethernet like outlet. And it was like we had to go to the very top level of the press box, which is not easy to get to because the elevators take forever if they're even working. It's like,
I mean,
renovations need to be done.
It's a chore.
It is.
But it is one of a kind.
The best chore that you can actually
The hamsters that run the internet at the Cotton Bowl have had it. But man, I will watch that game until I'm blue in the face. And if you've never been, this is my gift to you. Make a plan. I don't care if you hate Texas, you hate OU. I tell this story all the time. My cousin Matt from Pittsburgh, he was like, my buddy and I were talking about coming down for I was like, yes, do it. They were like, unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like, my cousin went to Miami, his buddy went to Pitt, and they walked out of there going, whoa, dude. Mind blowing. It is. It's the
It
best.
is. I think I've told this story before, but like my husband went to A&M. He does not like OU. He does not like Texas. I think he likes Texas more than he likes OU, but his dad was a high school football coach that sent guys like, Leonard Davis to Texas, Aaron Williams, like he coached those type of guys. But I think it was 2013. I think that was the year that we happened upon like an extra ticket. I was covering the game and I was like, you have to go to this game. And he was like, I've been to so many football games. He left that game and he will tell anybody, even Aggies, like nothing like it, nothing like it. And this is a guy that literally has no love. He has mainly hate for both OU and Texas. And he to this day will be like, I can't knock on it because it was the greatest atmosphere I've ever seen in my life.
It is.
And he's used to Kyle Field. I mean, Kyle Field is a
Right.
fantastic atmosphere. I mean, I knew, football players at Texas when I was in school and when I was a student at Texas. And I had a conversation one time with some of them, like about what's the hardest environment to play in. And they're like, Kyle Field. They're like, we literally had hand signals for each other in a huddle because we couldn't hear each other talking, like distance from someone right next to you. We couldn't hear a word they were saying because of how loud and crazy that atmosphere is. So they literally had hand signals and gestures to communicate with one another when they were like a foot away, not even a foot away from one another. That's how crazy Kyle Field is. But to put it in perspective, someone that watched tons of games at Kyle Field will say that Texas and OU in the Cotton Bowl is the greatest atmosphere he's seen.
The one thing that blows me away and freaks me out about going to games at Kyle Field is when they start swaying and the whole building is like, I think they did some engineering study, like earthquake proof. And I'm like, when they remodeled or renovated Kyle Field, expanded it, whatever, did they put all the earthquake stuff in? Because like, I haven't been back. I haven't been to Kyle Field since the new Kyle Field, what John Sharp calls the house that Johnny built. Johnny Sharp. I'm like, no, Johnny Manziel.
Okay. Yeah, exactly.
But I haven't been back since
house that Kevin Sumlin built.
Yeah. Oh my, Kevin Sumlin, the stories he could tell.
Yeah.
But like, I'm like, this is not safe, people. And their press box, like on the 9th floor. Like if that thing, okay, we don't want to talk about it.
No, we don't need to talk about that. Yeah.
Good gravy. I hope they reinforced everything, did the California earthquake reinforcement structures, whatever.
I would be shocked if they didn't. I would be absolutely shocked because, I mean, I've been in the press box at Texas when it starts shaking just from people jumping up and down. And my inner Californian, the first time was the West Virginia Texas game in, what was that, 2012, I think it was. And they played jump around for the first time. And literally the stadium, that was when like Geno Smith was at West Virginia.
West Virginia,
like
2012.
Yeah. And literally the press box was shaking. I remember being like, is there an earthquake? Like ready to like duck and cover because I'm used to living somewhere with earthquakes. And with the way that they do what do they call it? Is it just Aggie sway? I don't know whatever this whole thing is that they do.
Right.
Yeah, like you would have to build it with those reinforcements because what do they have? 108 or 105,000 like capacity, and they always sell out. Like, yeah, that would be a very foolish oversight and probably not something even, they wouldn't get permits probably to be allowed to do it, I don't think.
Yeah, my dad, Doc Brown, God bless him, R.I.P. I took him to that 99 game. Mm-hmm. And he was like, what on earth is happening? People don't sit down and the stadium is moving.
Yeah. And this is a Michigan fan, like the big house.
Oh, yeah.
Always went to the big
Michigan,
house. Yeah.
People who've been to the big house know it's such a big bowl that it's kind of the quietest 100,000 you've ever been around. Not A&M. I'll give them credit. That place is nuts. Okay, here's one. It says, does Del Conte have any interest in the USC job? No. Again,
I wouldn't take that job if I were an athletic director. I mean, I feel like there's been so much turmoil discourse between the president's office and the athletic department at USC for way longer than I think people actually know. They don't get a lot of support. I mean, if you go to the facilities at USC, you would be pretty shocked. And I know a couple of years ago, they didn't have individual, head strength and conditioning coach for football. It was one head strength. It was like basically when Mac Brown said in 2011 or whatever that Texas was momming and popping it because they didn't realize that they didn't have an individual strength and conditioning coach for football. And, Mad Dog was basically over the whole thing. USC recently, I don't know if that's changed, but USC recently, within the last 5 years, still had that because they don't have the support from the administration.
They offered Troy Tulowitzki the head coaching job for baseball. And he looked at the facilities and was like, I'll be back, maybe never.
Yeah.
And said no. And now he's getting some interest from the Miami Hurricanes. Oh. But, hey, Del Conte's not going to USC. We can answer that. Again, get to Horns 24/7. Stay in the know. Today's the last day of our 60% off promo.
Yeah. Yes. It ends tonight at 11 Central. So get on board for that 60% off. It ends up being, I think, $358 per month for 12 months of VIP Texas Scoop. And, there's a lot of new blood over at Horns 24/7. There's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of excitement surrounding Texas football, going into the 2023 season. This is the time to get on board. And again, it does expire at 11 p.m. Central Thursday night. So if you are not a member, jump on that annual membership promotion. And with an annual membership, you can also read all of the team sites in the 24/7 Sports Network and message boards as well. So there's a lot of talk about Texas across the 24/7 Sports Network right now. It's definitely a time to get in.
Yeah, and okay, here it is, I think. Glenn, great info coming out of 24/7 recently. Horns 24/7, mind you. It was a little dry for a while and makes me glad I kept my sub. Glenn is there's the testimonial right there. Big kudos to Hank South and Jordan Scruggs, who've come in and taken over the recruiting coverage from Mike Roach, who got promoted. Hank South covered Alabama for 8 years. Guy knows what he's doing. And Jordan Scruggs is one of these protege young guys who totally gets the recruiting game. He's all over the Micah Hudson recruitment. This guy totally, just has it in terms of making connections, relationships with players, covering recruiting. Really excited about both of these guys because they are all over it. And it's been fun to watch, honestly. And then, me, Eric Henry, we're getting Eric Henry up to speed. He's coming over from Florida. And, we're pounding the beat on the SEC stuff. And yeah, so come on, get in that promo. It's, we find it everywhere. You can go to Horns 24/7, look at the link that says 60% off. Go to Twitter, Horns 24/7 on Twitter. There's a big promo link right there. And then here's another question we can knock out real quick. Okay. This is interesting.
Which one? Okay.
Roll Tide. Georgia's about to finally have a real schedule. Play Bama in T-Town next year. Bama goes to Texas next year. Going to be exciting to see. Yeah, how about that? Georgia has never been to College Station. They've never been to Texas. A&M's been in the league 12 years.
Yeah, they've only played once, right? I mean, Texas played
Athens.
Georgia before A&M played Georgia in the SEC. Yeah.
Georgia's first trip to Texas for an SEC game is going to be against the Longhorns, not the Aggies. The Aggies have never been to Tennessee. I don't understand how this happens. By doing away with the divisions, Greg Sankey has said you're going to play everyone in the league once. on your field every 4 years. That means the players are going to get to see all the SEC stadiums. You know what I mean? It's like, if you play in the SEC, you should play, and you're there for 4 years, you should play everyone. You should experience everyone's home stadium, away, whatever. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
Good gravy. No, the SEC, what are you doing? But they're fixing it, so that's good.
Do you think, so I'm curious for your input on this. Do you think, I know the 2024 isn't going to have the divisions. Do you think they're going to change that in the future? Do you think, from what, your sources have told you, do you think that they're going to just stick with protecting the rivalries only? What do you think after 2024?
I think we're going 9 games, and I think we're going 3-6, the 3-6 format we've been talking about. So Texas would continue to play A&M, OU, and Arkansas. I do think that when that format is ultimately settled, you'll have either Arkansas or A&M coming to Austin. So like A&M coming in even years, Arkansas coming in odd years, not both games being away like it is in 2024.
Okay.
I think that's what will happen. I think that's certainly what Texas wants. So,
I mean, it makes sense. That would make sense, but
our man Tommy Yarish, over under $500 ticket prices for the first Texas A&M game. Yeah, it's gonna be nuts.
Our guy
they can
Tommy.
pay all they want about. We don't need each other. We got divorced. It's over. War of the Roses. No.
So what is your answer? Over or under?
I mean, how good a seat you want?
Yeah. I would say over. At least even maybe.
50-yard line. You want to sit between the 20s? You probably can go under in the end zones. Have you seen Kyle Field, those giant end zone seats? I'm like, man, who wants to sit in those seats? But
yeah. And Tommy, I just going to talk to you real quick. I saw your Slack message. I'll reach out to you. But I just seeing that, I'm like, oh no.
Let's just let me just return that message right now.
Yeah. Here's a question. Curious for your thoughts. So if you have not been over at Horns 24/7, our guy Trey Scott, who is director of editorial for the national 24/7 sports team, but he had a fantastic idea, and he deserves a ton of credit for this, before the SEC schedule came out, to have all future SEC teams put together basically a paragraph of assessing what their rosters are probably going to look like in 2024. Obviously, it's super early. Transfer portal changes everything. But if you haven't read that, go over to Horns 24/7. Jeff Howe put it out last night. It's a great article. You'll get a whole, insight of not just Texas opponents, but also, the SEC in 2024, the expectations from the people that cover the teams closest. But with that said, Chip, what do you expect from the UT roster in 2024?
I think offensively, they're going to be in outstanding shape because you'll have Calvin Banks basically in his last year as a college player. You'll have certainty, or you should have some certainty at the quarterback position. I mean, Quinn Ewers, if he has this, second year jump in the Sarkisian offense and he jumps to the NFL, could be Malik Murphy, who I like a lot, and feel like if something happens to Ewers in 2023, watch out, because Malik Murphy's one of these guys who just wills his team to victory. I think defensively is where it gets a little cloudy for me, because you look at the defensive line, you got Byron Murphy, Tavondre Sweat, Alfred Collins, Vernon Broughton. Depending on how well those guys play this year, they could all go after this season. So I don't expect it because we haven't seen it like that. But, Keandre Coburn had a big final year. He's collapsing pockets. It all came together for him. Charles Omenihu, remember Charles Omenihu? He put it all together in his final year, and he's still in the league. It clicks at different times for different guys. Casey Hampton showed up as a freshman. He was an NFL player day one. Charles Menahu, Keandre Coburn became NFL players in their final year. And I'm hearing that those guys, all of them, the names I just mentioned, are totally locked in, are treating this like a contract year, which tells me, again, Texas, this is the year. Don't mess around. I'll never forget this, Taylor, and this is a message to every Texas player in the locker room. In 2005, I'm at the ESPN Home Depot Awards with Vince Young and our buddy Michael Huff. And I say to Vince, give me an example of your leadership this season. Now, this is before the national championship game. And he said, well, looking after Ramon's Taylor was a full-time job. And I'm laughing my butt off because Ramon's is coach now. If he's watching this, he's laughing because when Ramon's was a college student, he was having a good time and he had buddies in Belton right up the road. He probably shouldn't have been spending time with. And I just laughed, but that's what it takes. If you got a star player who's making some bad decisions, the other star players got to be like, dude, you can't do that. Right. You can do it after the season. You can't do it now. And that's where Texas, it seems like the culture is in there and they're holding each other accountable. Kind of makes me reach for the Tums, all this culture, and the guys are locked in. They're working hard. They're pushing each other. I mean, I wrote about it in the Insider that you, again, need to go get your 60% off annual right now and go read that Insider because it's loaded. And this is a fascinating year. It's a fascinating year to be following Texas football for sure.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I mean, so this question here from Joe Rushing. Also, Joe, I saw your other comment about me leaving the Horns 24/7 team. I appreciate that. I'm going to miss y'all too, but I'm still going to chime in on the message board
and be
away. Around. I know. I mean, I just trained Eric Henry today, right before this. If my eyes are like bright red, it's because we were on Zoom for like almost 2 hours so I could train him on stuff. So can't get rid of me that quickly. But Joe Rushing has this question. Chip, can you talk a little bit about the 2023 expectations? We're kind of getting into that now. From a leadership perspective. I mean, Chris Del Conte, we had him on the podcast. When was that? In the spring? I think it was. Yeah, it was like in March or something. I can't remember. I know it was this past spring. And you had asked Chris Del Conte kind of like, what's a win number, a number of wins that Sark needs to have to be considered the season's success. Obviously, he did not take the bait. But from hearing through your sources, I think, and from what I have heard through my own sources, I feel like the expectation is much elevated from the administration. Now, obviously, they're going to understand if barring substantial injuries, barring things like that at key positions. I think the expectations are pretty high. I think everyone is expecting Texas to compete for a Big 12 title. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I think most importantly, the players are expecting that. That's the key. It doesn't matter what the fans, it matters somewhat how the coach gets that across to players. But when the players have totally taken the reins and like when Vince Young put on the whiteboard, if you want to beat Ohio State, meet me here every night at 7:00 for summer workouts. And that's the kind of vibe you're getting. You want to beat Alabama on September 9th in Tuscaloosa, where they have a 24-game home winning streak and an 18-game home winning streak at night, then come on and pour it all in. And I that's the part that makes me say, okay, you got to see it from Quinn Ewers. But he's done everything to move himself forward, from remaking his body to doubling down on the offense, learning it all, being more of a vocal leader out of his comfort zone. And then I'm big on Jonathan Brooks. I'm big on Jonathan Brooks, 24 in your program. He's going to be the number one running back, in my opinion. You'll have CJ Baxter and Jaden Blue and Savion Red and Keelan Robinson all vying for, maybe the committee at number 2 running back. But my God, the receiver room, You know, you got AD Mitchell. I mean, how does that happen? How does a kid who's won back-to-back national championships and has caught a touchdown pass in 4 college football playoff games, including 2 national championship games, including the go-ahead touchdown to barely beat Ohio State in the semifinal last year? How's that guy end up in your locker room? Oh my gosh. Well, he's got a child. He's from Missouri City. He's got a child in Houston he wants to be closer to. How'd that work out? I mean, this guy's a monster. And
it shows how good Georgia also is, too, that they have so much talent. They've been recruiting so well. I see there is a Georgia fan in here saying that nobody can beat the mighty Georgia Bulldogs. I mean, it's hard not to agree with that. Do you think they're going to three-peat?
Well, that's the thing. And I keep saying this. I'm watching the defensive tackle recruitment at Texas. Mm-hmm. In 24 and 25, they've got to hit home runs. You got Sadir Mitchell last year. You need that kid to be a monster because you really only took one big, one technique defensive tackle. And the reason Georgia, Alabama, Clemson have been repeat national championship winners, go look at their defensive tackles. Alabama had them lined up. Deron Payne, Quinnen Williams, pick one. Clemson, same thing. Now Georgia has the guys that Alabama was getting. And Jalen Carter, say whatever you want, that dude on the football field is a wrecking machine. And those are the kind of players that Texas has to get if they want to be in the conversation, if they want to get into that, be a real contender, a real, national championship contender. Oklahoma made it to the college football playoff 3 years under Lincoln Riley. The reason they never advanced is because they didn't have the defense to shut down people. Remember, they had the lead on Georgia in the Rose Bowl. Baker Mayfield's run all over the place. They didn't have the defense to slow down, Nick Chubb and the Georgia offense. It just you got to have those guys, and they're the hardest to find outside of a franchise quarterback. And Texas got to keep bringing them in because right now Texas has them, but man, it can come and go quickly. And so if Georgia still has more of those guys sitting there in the wings, they keep losing 10 guys to the NFL, and no big deal.
Yeah. Just
Georgia
rinse and repeat basically there.
You got to see their quarterback situation. We don't know. Stetson Bennett was 25 last year. He was older than Lamar Jackson, and Lamar Jackson's been an NFL MVP. He's older than Joe Burrow. Stetson Bennett is older than Joe Burrow. That matters. That stuff matters. So we'll see if Georgia has the quarterback. We'll see if they looks like they still got that defense, man. Kirby's got it going. Nick's nervous. Nick Saban is nervous. You can tell because he's getting a little cranky about stuff that he normally doesn't get cranky about. At SEC meetings, he's like, the way Texas A&M, and USC are spending money, it's like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
Nick doesn't like people kind of catching up.
He liked the under the table deals that he kept.
Yeah, he doesn't know anything about that, Taylor.
He has no idea, nothing.
He doesn't know anything about that. What are you talking about?
Ask some other people. Yeah, exactly. That's when, now that it's over the table, it's like, oh, wait, we can't keep up with this, and it's unfortunate for our Alabama fans because they, it's hard to compete with Texas and with Texas A&M, the money that the boosters and the alumni and just there's so much. It's hard for anybody to keep up with it. And Texas, and at least Texas, was not doing a great job of any of those under the table deals. Now that it's over the table, it's hard to keep up for a lot of programs.
Well, and DeLoss Dodds and Mac Brown said they'd never go to the SEC under their watch because they didn't think it was a level playing field. And now that you have NIL and what was under the table is over the table, and now you're passing laws saying the NCAA can't regulate us.
Yeah, exactly.
the conference can't regulate. And if you read the Insider at Horns 24/7 this morning, you're going to start getting loyalty points for NIL contributions at Texas. So, because it felt, I think a lot of the fans and donors are like, who am I giving the money to? Like, I don't know these people. I don't know what's going on. But now the Longhorn Foundation is basically saying, no, you're okay. You can give money to these guys. We'll give you loyalty points. You're going to get credit and better seats and all that. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Checkbook.
It's essentially what A&M was kind of the first to do. And we talked about this, I think, last week on the show. Like, I kind of gave them, it was a kind of risky move, but it's like, force the NCAA to actually regulate this. They're not going to. And A&M essentially gave everyone else a blueprint of how to get the boosters to have the questions about where the money's going to, get them in by giving them perks. And I know it's technically against NCAA policy right now, but the NCAA, if you're not doing that at this point, knowing that the NCAA is sitting on their hands and not actually, and hoping that Congress like steps in somehow, when Congress has been for players making money on their name, image, and likeness, like, if you're not taking advantage of that, then you are missing a massive opportunity. And I give credit to A&M for being the first one to essentially force the NCAA's hand and knowing that they probably wouldn't. So, and they get a slap on the wrist anyway. Let's be real. It was not like they would get like, the death penalty or something. They're not giving those out anymore. And they're especially not going to touch the schools that make the most money at all.
Yeah. Well, and A&M is fascinating because the 12th Man Foundation is not even part of the athletic department.
Yeah.
It's like, that's a whole separate set of dudes who are putting pressure on sports to come through. Then you got the athletic department and Ross Bjork, and then you got John Sharp over there lording over everyone. But yeah, 12th Man Foundation is like running the NIL stuff for A&M. Yeah. It's fascinating.
It is.
It's to say it's the Wild West is insulting to the Wild West.
Yeah. Eric Henry, I'm going to give you. So our guy, Eric Henry, he will be eventually taking over my role on the Flagship Podcast. I still might just like chime in a little bit, maybe. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah,
But
come on.
I have to put this up there because I want to be like, I just got promoted, but hey, I'm okay with another raise for training him.
You hear that?
No,
bosses. All right, listen. I mean,
we've been going for
basically your takeaways from this Flagship Podcast are: go use the 60% off promotion. We're not going to give you everything in the Insider here on the Flagship Podcast, so go do that. And the recruiting that's happening at Horns 24/7, the coverage, Hank South, Jordan Scruggs, these guys are monsters. It's fun watching them work. Get in, use that thing, 60% off. You're paying like $3 a month. You spend that. You spend twice that much to go to Starbucks once. Come on. It's Father's Day this weekend, so buy it for your pops, or if you're a dad, say, I took care of my Father's Day present. I'm good.
Yeah, absolutely. And the, as Chip mentioned, Hank South covered Alabama recruiting for, what'd you say, 8 years?
8 years.
Yeah, but he was based in Austin, Texas. So he went to the University of Texas. Like, he has the connections in the state of Texas because Alabama has done a really good job of recruiting the state of Texas and some of the top talent in the state of Texas. So, it's not a situation where you have a guy that has no ties to the program, has no ties in the state, anything like that. No, he's been based out of Texas and Austin covering Alabama recruiting. So, and as you said, Jordan Scruggs, he eats, sleeps, drinks recruiting. This is like, he that's what he wants to do. And you need that for recruiting, guys. Recruiting is not the easiest thing to do. It takes a special type of person to cover recruiting. And I think that, Horns 24/7 has definitely benefited in adding them. And also Mike Roach is still covering the state of Texas recruiting. So he'll be chiming in too. And Mike's another one that has always, eat, breathe, slept recruiting. So definitely take advantage of that 60% off special.
Yeah, Do it. All right, everybody. We'll sign off now. But Taylor, thanks for standing in for Eric. Eric, I know you got trained up, so let's go. And hey, until next time, we'll see you over at horns247.com for Taylor, for Eric, for everybody. Hank, Jordan over at Horns 24/7. Till next time, stay safe and keep the faith.